نحمده تعالى ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده، وارضى اللهم عن الصحابة والتابعين وتابعيهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First, and at the beginning of the khutbah, I'd like to start by asking Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy upon our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Syria and all over the Muslim world who are suffering at the hands of the aggressors and tyrants, the criminals everywhere. Allahumma Azza wa Jal, Allahumma ya Rabbi kuf ma'ahum وكن معهم وثبتهم على الحق يا الله. اللهم سدد رميهم وثبت أقدامهم ووحد كلمتهم يا رب العالمين وانصرهم على من عاداهم يا Allah. Second, I like to ask Allah Azza wa Jal, I like for all of us to pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy on the lives of those who perished yesterday in that despicable act of shooting down a jetliner on which a lot of innocent people, albeit Muslims and non-Muslims, ya ikhwad, هذه أرواح بريئة. These are innocent souls that were traveling from one place to the other, and they paid a heavy price for flying over a troubled area, the Ukrainians. Some of them are Muslims like you or me, going home to Malaysia to celebrate Eid al-Fitr with their families. One such woman has not seen her family in 5 years, and she managed to find a vacation to go visit her family. May Allah Azza wa Jal have mercy on her soul and give her family in Malaysia, our Muslim brothers and sisters, give them the steadfastness and the patience to put up with this grave tragedy. Every time something like this happens, and I'm referring to the issue of Gaza in particular, and I've been in this community for 40 years, exactly 40 years. Brother Abu Ahmed knows I used to be his student at that time. And we together worked to build these institutions, including this masjid and many others before. And in our work with the community, there is always the question being raised at a time of a calamity like the one we're going through. And I remember the first time we were asked this question, the question of what can we do, what should we do, is there anything we can do? Was in 1982, after the massacres of our brothers and sisters in Hama. And the days went by, and there was one more and another and another. And most recently, the attack on Gaza in 2008, we sat down and we were debating this issue of what to do. And I think it's about time we knew what to do. We are a mature community that should have the answer to this question. But before I get into the technical aspects of this khutbah, which I dedicate to Gaza and to our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and inshallah I will develop it into a workshop that will be presented at the Mass ICNA convention in Chicago in November, inshallah, and you will get to hear a briefing of it today, inshallah. But before I get into the technical aspect of the khutbah, we have to go back to Kitab Allah Azza wa Jal to see what Allah Azza wa Jal says about these circumstances. Because our number one reference is Kitab Allah Azza wa Jal. We cannot use our mind while Kitab Allah wa Sunnati Rasulihi bayna aydina. Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Ali Imran, in response to the grave incident or battle of Uhud and its consequences and the killing of the 70 Sahaba, where the Muslims were wondering, where did this come from? After the victory of Badr, then all of a sudden in Uhud, they suffered this major loss, including the killing of Hamza, Sayyid al-Shuhada, radiyallahu anhu. So the Quran responded in Ayah 165, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أو كلما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثليها قلتم أن هذا قل هو من عند أنفسكم. Every time you are smited by a catastrophe or a calamity like this, you ask the question, where did this come from? Or how could this happen to us? Say, oh Muhammad, this is from yourselves. In other words, look inside for the solution. Do not look elsewhere for the solution. You cannot blame Khalid bin Walid for radiallahu anhu, who was a kafir at that time. He was a mushrik. You cannot blame him for taking advantage of a hole in the line where he managed to get in and beat the Muslims. He was doing his job. Blame yourselves. Sha'rawi rahimahullah comments on this ayah by saying, number one, Allah Azza wa Jal la yujamilu ahadan. Allah Azza wa Jal does not give preferential treatment to anyone, including the Sahaba of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They disobeyed Allah Azza wa Jal, they paid a price. We cannot say they were punished because Allah Azza wa Jal gives tarbiyah to the Sahaba, not punishment. And there's a big difference. You punish someone you don't like and you give tarbiyah to someone you love. If your son did something wrong and you admonish them, you may even exercise some tarbiyah methods to try to bring them back and to try to teach them. And when Allah Azza wa Jal allowed the Kafirs to kill 70 of the Sahaba, it was to give tarbiyah to the Muslim Ummah, to give it that nourishment and that nurturing that it's required to mature and to become a leader for humanity. So no one can say it is a punishment. It's not a punishment. It's a tarbiyah method used by the Quran. So Sheikh Sha'rawi says, Allah la yujamilu ahadan. There's no preferential treatment. You disobey the namus, the laws of Allah Azza wa Jalla, you will suffer the consequences. Number two, the sunan of Allah Azza wa Jalla will take place at any time, at any place. And the end of the ayah, Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir, says that Allah, the one who put together the laws in the first place, can change them too. So don't think because they are nawamis, they are laws, that they don't change. The one who put them can change them too. But there is a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. There is a condition before Allah can change the namus and can turn things around. In Surah Al-Ra'd, Allah Azza wa Jal says you have to change yourself. Start within you. Start from the inside out. That's where you look for the answers, not somewhere else. Stop blaming the lobby groups and the bad people out there. Look inside for the answers. In the next ayah, ما أصابكم, Allah confirms this point. ما أصابكم يوم التقى الجمعان, when the two parties fought on the day of Uhud, what calamity struck you, فبإذن الله, Allah Azza wa Jal allowed it. It didn't happen in spite of Allah. Allah allowed it. وَلِيَعْلَمَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, so that Allah Azza wa Jal will separate the believers from the hypocrites, from the half-believers, and so on and so forth. So this is the main outline in the book of Allah Azza wa Jal for how calamities come sometimes and how they can be changed and turned around. What I'm going to share with you right now is a four-point plan to lift ourselves, to uplift ourselves. Because, ya akhwa, wallahi, we are tired of people telling us what's wrong with us. It is about time we start talking about what's right with us and how we can use that to better ourselves, not just for ourselves, but also for our children and grandchildren. I am no longer talking about a future for my children. I now look in the eyes of my grandchildren and I feel that we have a major responsibility to take care of. These responsibilities can be divided, as the professionals divide them, into four different categories. There is a theory in public management called the public value theory. There's no time to get into it, but it divides your concerns or your goals into four major goals. Number one, goals related to building your institutions and organizations. These organizations, we cannot continue to run them as if we are still in that rented space on top of that bar on Main Street next to Jaridat al-I'tidal. Ya ikhwa, we have moved out of there 20 years ago, and it is time we upgrade our management systems and the way we run our institutions. And this is not about ICPC, this is about every single one of our centers. Many of our centers are multi-million-dollar centers, and I've visited many of them all over the United States. In the last 4 years, that's what I've been doing. Just visiting and studying, trying to help out in what's going on. Many of them are being run exactly the same way they were run 25, 30 years ago. Isn't it time we grow? And let me be specific so that you don't think I'm simply just rambling or attacking. There is at least four different areas that we need to look at. Number one, the structure of the organization. This is science, ya akhwa. Master's degrees and PhDs are given in how to build the correct structure. And specifically non-profit organizations, they are unique. There is specific laws that have to do with the structure of non-profit organizations that are different from you and I running our businesses. I spent 27 years running businesses, came into the non-profit world to help out, to find out that there's a lot that I didn't know. At my age, I had to enroll in school to learn the basics of how to run an organization, to see what is the difference between running a business and a company and between running a center that caters to a mission that it has swore itself to a clientele that is different from buyers and sellers that give you money for your services. This is science, this is ilm that we need to learn. Number two, the culture of the organization. We need to pay attention to that. Is it a culture where we are still running things the way we were running it 30 years ago? هذا ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا. Is it more important that we do things the way it was done in Pakistan, Palestine, and Egypt than it is being in the United States? Some of us still live in Jordan 40 years later. We live here. Our children live here. That's why when we talk to our children, they don't understand us. They hear us, but they say, Dad, you're a fob. You just got off the boat. You're not real. You don't understand our real problems here. We have real problems that you and your brothers, your uncles, the ammos like you don't understand. Isn't it time you listen to us instead of us listening to you? I'm not trying to arouse the youth in this audience against their parents, la wallah, because I will be the first one attacked. All I'm trying to do is raise awareness to what our organizations need. We need to take a look at our structure, our bylaws, our leadership. We need to look at our culture. We need to look at our resources. And there's more on that in a moment, but I just wanted to raise these as a matter of awareness. Let's talk about the structure for a couple of minutes. I'm only going to focus on two things: the structure of the organization and the leadership of the organization. Let's talk about the boards. We recently had the board elected. And I go around the country and I watch how boards are being elected. Ya ikhwa, the question number one, do the electors know what they're looking for? They elect board members without knowing anything about the board members. They just pick names from a list based on who do I like and who do I see around. They don't know their capabilities. They don't know anything about them. Number two, are the board members that are being elected in these community centers, are they committed? Many of them, the day after they're elected, you don't see them. Until the next election cycle, they don't show up. And if they show up, they sit there and contribute nothing. وَفَاقِدُ الشَّيْءِ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. Sometimes they contribute nothing because they know nothing. And whose fault is it? Except the one who elected them in the first place. Number three, do they have the know-how? Have they received any training? Does any one of them have any management training? If anybody has a management training, is it in a specific area like the non-profit area? The laws that serve the non-profit organizations in this country are different from those that serve companies and businesses. Ya ikhwa, we are too hard on ourselves. The laws of the United States give us a lot of leeway on how we can conduct business. In this country, you're not allowed to discriminate. Yet, if you are a non-profit organization, you can discriminate. You can insist that every employee in this organization is a Muslim and a devout Muslim, and you can set a criteria for what kind of a person can get in and cannot get in. And yet, we sacrifice a lot of these privileges that we have because we don't know better. This is just about the structure. How about the culture? I touched on it briefly earlier. Is it a culture of هذا ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا? Is it a diverse culture as far as the members? Do our boards have representation that reflects the community? Do the sisters have any role? Ya ikhwa, we treat the sisters like if they are second-hand citizens. Why aren't the sisters given the opportunity? And many would answer this, and I hear this answer with my own ear from a respected brother. He said, yeah, but they don't come forward. Ya ikhwa, in this country, there are laws that do not simply open the door for people to participate. Affirmative action in this country does not simply mean you give equality. It means you remove obstacles. It means you are proactively searching sisters to serve on your board. It means if your sister needs babysitting so that she can participate in giving her opinion about how to run the center, that somebody should make a babysitting arrangement available for her so that she can put her 4 children for 2-3 hours in safety and harmony. If she has a job and she has to take times off, she has to be compensated. We have to be proactive.
Affirmative active action does not simply mean when they come that you treat them equally. It means facilitate that they come, make it easy, be proactive. And if somebody says, what have you done for the sisters to make them participate? And I'm not patronizing the sisters, I'm being real. And remove the word sister, put the youth, it's the same thing. Do we make our centers hospitable and open our doors to our youth? Do we make it easier for them to participate, give us their opinion, tell us about what programs they want so that they become the leaders of tomorrow? Or are we simply rehashing the same plans from 20 and 30 years ago? I look at the plans of some centers that are being used right now. Wallahi, they are nothing more than a copy of one that was drafted 20 years ago by some ammo who's dead under the ground right now. It's about time, ya ikhwa, that we live in the moment. Let's not complain about what's happening in Gaza. Let's complain about what's happening here. The reason things are happening in Gaza and elsewhere is because we're not doing our role. We are not taking our role in this country as leaders in this community that we can speak on their behalf and advocate for them. We're not doing it. وَفَاقِدُ الشَّيْءِ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. If you don't have anything, you can't give it. What about the resources? I've been participating in fundraisings probably at least for 30 years. And almost every day I'm in a fundraising. And it's the same exact method that we used for the day we landed in this country. In technical language, it's called the reverse auction method. In other words, you start with the big numbers, you work your way down to the lower numbers. In science, it's called the pyramid method. Different names, but it's the same process. Ya ikhwa, this is just one method of more than 20 different methods of raising funds. How many of you know that more than 50% of the revenue of non-profit organizations, which count 800,000 organizations in this country, more than 50% of their revenue comes from the US government? How quickly does somebody tell you that the government doesn't support religious institutions? Yes, they do. There is more than $500 billion set aside, ready to be written as grants to centers such as this one. Yet we find it easy to reach out to the same community, and we will continue to do that until we learn how to do better. But look what a price we're paying for not knowing how to do it the right way. The other communities are getting money from foundations, from the government, from many different sources. And yes, 75% of the revenue of not just non-profits in general, not charitable organizations. Non-profits are 1.5 million in this country. 800,000 are charitable religious organizations. The other 700,000 or so are non-profits. In total, non-profit revenue, more than 75% comes from people like you and me. But there's still billions being raised from foundations. Are we tapping that source? Why are we still relying on the same method that was used 30 years ago? Why can't we upgrade our methods and learn better ways to do it? Even those who do fundraising, do we have a fundraising plan? Do we know how to write a case study? These things are taught in school, ya ikhwa. You can take a 3-credit course at Rutgers University that will teach you how to put together a fundraising plan that will fund the center for 3 years to come. When we go to present our case to get funds, do we have a one-page paper called a case statement that explains who we are, who started us, who do we serve, how many people benefit from the center, how will the money be used? Do we have anything like that? A single piece of paper? We don't. These are things that can be taught. I can teach it in a half hour to a couple of young people in college who can then draft the most beautiful case statement that can be passed on to people who have tons of money to give. In this country, the people that give money last year gave $300 billion with a B. $300 billion. We are the most generous country on earth. Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Yet it takes a smart person to know how to tap that source and how to get that money, and we need to learn that. Second, so this is all internal. Second, we need to work on improving the experience of our goals related to the community we serve. I call them the members. And when I say members, I would love to think of those who pay monthly fees or who are registered at the center's roster as members. But in reality, there is really no difference between members and non-members, because if there was any difference, we would know it, except for the right to elect officials. Ya ikhwa, a member there should be some privileges that a member would enjoy that a non-member will not enjoy. To entice the ones who are not members to become members. For a center to be strong, a center has to be able to pull out a roster that says, I have 3,000 regulars that come here regularly. 600 of them come on Jum'ah, and 4,000 of them show up on Eid, and on and on and on. When the executive director of the center presents a roster like that, people will listen. Right now, they have to take our statement on its own. They have to, just trust me, a lot of people come here. How many? I'm not really sure, but a lot of people come here. How would anybody listen to us? We have to enhance the experience so that when somebody comes to this center, that person walks away saying, MashaAllah, I felt like a family. That person has to love to come to this center, not begrudgingly come in to drop the wajib and so that he's not guilty of not attending the salah. This has to be the place to be, ya akhwa. Wallahi, the disparity between centers from one state to the other, and even within the same state in the same city. You go to one center, the moment you walk through the door, you smell the bathrooms. You walk into another one, the moment you walk through the door, you think you're in the lobby of the Marriott. Why? And you look a little deeper, you find that the people who are running the one center that's stinky and that doesn't smell good and that looks like it was built in the Middle Ages, they are still operating with the standards of back home, whatever home is, and they are refusing to grow into modernity. How long is that center going to continue to attract young people into it? Before you know it, they will migrate towards a center that appeals to their senses, that the aesthetics meet their standards, the same standards that they have in their homes. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. There is other responsibility, the third one. We need to have goals that have to do with the Muslim community at large. And when I say the Muslim community at large, ya akhwa, I'm not talking about Muslims in North Bergen and Union City. I'm talking about, yes, our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine. There's some loud voices that are rising here and there, especially among the respected youth. I love them dearly, they're my children. But every once in a while I hear them saying, charity begins at home. We have to take care of our own problems here before we look at the East. Can't we do both? Can't one chew gum and walk at the same time? Why do we have to give one up for the other? I don't understand. Since when does a Muslim ignore the plight of his brothers and sisters, whether they are in Atlanta, Georgia, or whether they are in Gaza? Since when? المسلم أخو المسلم لا يسلمه ولا يظلمه. Rasulukum sallallahu alayhi wasallam says the Muslim is the brother of the other Muslim. Wallahi, if you're able to go to sleep and eat and drink and do the things that we do without checking to see what's going on in Gaza or Al Yarmouk, which has been under siege for 1 year, no food, no water, nothing. Mukhayyam Al Yarmouk, ya akhwa, people are dying from hunger. What are we doing for them? That is a responsibility. We need to set some goals that relate to the Muslims outside of our membership, those beyond the borders of Patterson. And that doesn't happen overnight. We cannot wake up one day as a reaction to the calamities that are going on and want to change things. We want to call the congressman. And on that point, I heard yesterday some brothers complaining that our senator, I'm not even going to honor him by mentioning his name here, that one of our senators is sponsoring a bill to support the aggressors in their attack on Gaza. And they were angry that he did that. I said, no. Don't be angry at him, be angry at us. Because I know this guy when he was a small-time attorney, begging us for closing deals to make $500 a closing in Union City, New Jersey. And he knows me and I know him. He is now a big shot senator. But his journey from being a small-time attorney to being a senator was not without a price. A lot of people help him get there. And when he sits down to decide whom to side with, he remembers those that stood by him over those years. I'll give you one example. He would send us tickets for his fundraising or for his campaign a few years ago. $500 a ticket, it was somewhat pricey. We would buy a couple of them and send the rest back. I can imagine the expression on his face getting his tickets back from the Muslim community. And then we come to him years later and we want him to support our causes. Whom do we blame but ourselves? Ya ikhwa, if you want public officials, and I'm speaking in general, from the mayor of this small city to the governor to the president himself, who the other day slighted every Muslim in America by having the Israeli ambassador speak at an iftar before himself to lecture us on what's right and wrong in Gaza. Then he stands up and he affirms what the Israeli ambassador is saying, and while our representatives are sitting there eating their iftar, wallahi, I would have puked all over the table when I heard him spoke. I would have got up and left. I would have said, you have dishonored us by inviting us here to lecture us on what we know best. We know human rights, Mr. President. We're the ones who elected you because we believed in human rights. We believed that you deserve a chance. But now we believe that we don't. How many of our leaders took a stand? The majority of them are defending, the ones who were at the dinner, defending their position and why they didn't leave. Well, you know what I think? I think they are not leaders. I think every single one of them should be removed from his leadership position. And that's in your hands. Many of them sit at the top of non-profit organizations that are run by boards. Those boards are elected by members like yourselves. You need to look at those organizations and demand a change of leadership, because a true leader will not sit there and eat biryani while at the same time the president is saying the Yahud have the right to kill our children in Gaza. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Enough is enough. But these are some of our responsibilities. And ya ikhwa, I'm not simply raising an issue or raising a problem. I'm not trying to bother you. All I'm trying to do is say that to be effective, you need to prepare. أو كلما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثليها قلتم أن هذا قل هو من عند أنفسكم. Let's look inside for solutions. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Two things remaining and I'll release you inshallah for the next khutbah. Ya akhwa, the fourth type of goals that we need to set and we need to pay attention to is those that have to do with our neighbors. When I say our neighbors, I'm talking about our Christian, Jewish, and agnostic, and the rest of the world. We have responsibility towards them. Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to give them da'wah. Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't blame them for being who they are. Allah Azza wa Jal blames us for not giving them da'wah. وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. None of them will ever be held accountable unless they have received the message loud and clear. And who is to deliver that message? وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. You. The most honorable thing you and I can do is to give da'wah to these people. And when I say da'wah, I'm not talking about standing at the corner of the street giving them pamphlets. That's just one method. I'm talking about being a good neighbor. I'm talking about shoveling the snow of the old lady next door. Ya akhwa, I heard the story yesterday. I must share it with you. A priest in Russia giving a speech. I posted it on my Facebook. Some of you who are my friends can refer to it and listen to it. A priest in Russia is addressing his congregation. And he says to them, an old woman came to me and said, why is it that every time I take a taxi to come to church, if it is a Christian brother, he always charges me, and he says it's his job. But when it's a Muslim who gives me, there's a lot of Muslims in Russia, by the way. When it's a Muslim cab driver who drives me, he refuses to take money. Almost every time. He says, Ya Ummi, oh mom, I cannot take money from you. Number one, you're like my mother. Number two, you are going to a house of worship to worship Allah Azza wa Jal. How could I take money from you? Priest, can you tell me? Can you explain why is this happening? The priest gets up and gives the most eloquent presentation on what Islam is. He says Islam and Muslims are more devout, more respectful of the tenets of their deen, and that's why they are good to you and to themselves. And he said, I wish our taxi drivers will learn from those Muslims. Wallahi, he stopped one iota shy from becoming a Muslim himself. Ya akhwa, those taxi drivers are giving the best da'wah for Islam, better than a tremendous lecture by the best Islamic speakers that could be out there. Actions speak louder than words. We need to be the good neighbor that Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to be. ما زال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يوصي بالجار حتى ظننت أنه يورثه. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم continued to tell us to take care of our neighbor until we thought he was going to make him inherit us. To inherit, you have to be an organic relative. You have to be a son or a daughter or a brother or a father. Some of your immediate relatives don't inherit. And yet the Rasulullah ﷺ kept saying, take care of your neighbor, take care of your neighbor. Take care of your neighbor. Are we taking care of our neighbor? If we want people to march in the street in the thousands to support our causes, let us support their causes. Let us start by paying attention to the poor and the hungry in this country. And yes, again, we can do both. Ya akhu, wallahi, we can do both. We just need how to upgrade our methods. We need to upgrade our resources, as I said in the beginning, in the middle of the khutbah. There is a lot of barakah out there. We just need to have the willpower. We need to have leadership that understands its role. We need ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين. أستغفر الله. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين وأعلي بفضلك ومنتك وكرمك كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم من أراد بالإسلام خيرا فوفقه إلى كل خير، ومن أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين شرا فخذه أخذ عزيز مقتدر. اللهم انصر إخواننا المجاهدين في غزة. اللهم ثبت أقدامهم وسدد رميهم وانصرهم على عدوهم. اللهم يا رب ارحم أطفالنا ونساءنا وشيوخنا من الظالمين الفجرة الفاسقين في كل مكان يا الله. اللهم قيض لهذه الأمة قيادة ربانية تدلها على العمل الصالح وتقودها للخير يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.